This is the story of a man who nearly killed himself with nitric acid, went to prison so many times he called it his hotel, and watched his children dig through neighbors' gardens for half-ripe potatoes. Also that one day, your car tires would actually work. Every single tire on your vehicle exists because of Charles Goodyear, not the company, the man. And the history of vulcanized rubber doesn't start with some triumphant lab discovery. It starts with toxic fumes, melting mailbags, and a decade of spectacular failure that nearly erased him from history entirely. Go back to the early 1830s. America had just burned through what people called rubber fever. Factories sprung up overnight to cash in on this miracle waterproof gum from Brazil. The Roxbury India Rubber Company, the first rubber factory in the United States, sold shoes, boots, and clothing across the country. Investors poured in as much as $2 million. Everyone wanted in, and then the whole thing collapsed. Nobody had solved a crucial problem. Natural rubber was worthless in extreme temperatures. In winter, it froze bone hard. In summer, it melted into a sticky, foul-smelling paste. The Roxbury Company alone had to take back $30,000 worth of products in a single year, including capes, life preservers, shoes, and wagon covers, all returned as shapeless, stinking lumps. The directors got so desperate they buried the rejected inventory in a pit in the middle of the night. That's how bad it was. Investors lost millions. Every single young rubber company folded within 5 years, and the entire country settled on one conclusion: rubber was finished in America. Enter Charles Goodyear, born in 1800 in New Haven, Connecticut, the oldest of 6 children. His father was a farmer and inventor. The family relocated to Philadelphia in 1826 and opened what's considered the first hardware store for domestically produced tools in the United States. By 1830, that business had gone bankrupt, and Goodyear landed in debtors' prison for the first time. It would not be the last. Somewhere around 1831, Goodyear became obsessed with rubber, not casually interested, obsessed. He visited the Roxbury Company and saw the disaster firsthand. A manager walked him through a warehouse packed with rows of misshapen blobs, their folds stuck together, the air pungent and foul. Most people would have walked away. Goodyear saw opportunity. His first real attempt was mixing rubber with magnesia, then boiling it in quicklime and water. It seemed to work. The stickiness disappeared. He attracted international attention. And then one day, a single drop of weak acid fell on the treated cloth, neutralized the alkali, and the rubber went soft again. Back to square one. He didn't stop. In 1834, he tried something far more dangerous and started experimenting with nitric acid. When he applied nitric acid directly to a rubber sample, something strange happened. The surface turned smooth, dry, and non-sticky. It felt like cloth. That was a genuine breakthrough, and it's a chapter in the story that most people have never heard. By 1836, he'd refined what became known as the acid gas process, treating rubber with nitric acid combined with bismuth and copper nitrates. The results looked promising. Really promising. He produced materials that impressed people at every level. Even President Andrew Jackson sent him a letter of commendation. But the experiments were destroying his body. Exposure to nitric acid and lead oxide ravaged his health. On one occasion, gas generated in his laboratory nearly killed him. The resulting fever came dangerously close to finishing the job, and a contemporary account noted that everybody knew how lucky he was to have survived. Despite everything, the acid gas process earned Goodyear a contract from the US Post Office to manufacture mailbags. This was his big break, a government contract, validation. Then summer arrived. The mailbags crumbled. The nitric acid had only cured the surface of the rubber, and inside, it was the same unstable mess it had always been. The contract evaporated. The panic of 1837 wiped out his business partner's entire fortune, leaving Goodyear penniless once again. Think about where this man stood. His health was wrecked from acid fumes. His business was gone. His reputation was destroyed. The American press openly called him a disturbed man who would never make a genuine discovery. And he kept going. He mixed chemicals in pots and pans in his wife's kitchen. He ran experiments in debtors' prison, which he visited so often he started calling it his hotel. When one of his infant sons died, he couldn't afford a funeral. His neighbors watched the Goodyear children digging in gardens for half-ripe potatoes. He sold the family's furniture. He sold his children's textbooks. He held onto a set of china teacups not out of sentiment, but because they doubled as mixing bowls for rubber and turpentine. After preparing his mixtures in his New York attic, he'd walk 3 miles to a mill in Greenwich Village to run his experiments. 3 miles each way, every single day. There's a saying from that era: if you see a man with an India rubber coat, India rubber shoes, and an India rubber cap, and in his pocket an India rubber purse with nothing in it, you'll know it's Goodyear. In 1838, he met Nathaniel Hayward, a self-taught experimenter who had discovered that sulfur produced promising effects on rubber. Goodyear bought the rights to Hayward's process for $3,000, money he almost certainly didn't have. Then came 1839. During an argument in his shop at the Eagle India Rubber Company in Woburn, Massachusetts, Goodyear accidentally dropped a piece of sulfur-impregnated rubber onto a hot stove. Instead of melting into the usual gooey disaster, it barely charred. The rubber held its form. It was firm. It was resilient. That was the moment, but it took 5 more years of refinement before he nailed the exact formula, which used steam under pressure applied for 4 to 6 hours at around 132 degrees Celsius. On June 15, 1844, he received U.S. patent number 3633 for the vulcanization of rubber. You'd think that's where the story turns happy. It doesn't. He spent years in court fighting patent infringers, prosecuting 32 separate cases, and eventually hiring Daniel Webster for $15,000 for essentially 2 days' work. Webster won, earning more from that single appearance than Goodyear had made in years. Meanwhile, Thomas Hancock in Britain reverse-engineered Goodyear's samples and filed a British patent just weeks before Goodyear got around to filing his own. In 1855, Goodyear was jailed in Paris for 16 days over unpaid debts. While sitting in that cell, he received the Cross of the Legion of Honor from Napoleon III. Awards in prison, that was his life. His wife Clarissa died in England in 1853, worn down by their years of poverty. Only 6 of their 12 children survived to adulthood. Goodyear himself died on July 1, 1860, $200,000 in debt. But here's the thing, by the time he died, the rubber industry his patents created employed 60,000 people and generated over $8 million annually. Rubber consumption had grown from 38 tons in 1825 to 8,000 tons by 1870, and the vulcanization process he perfected changed so little over time that it's essentially the same formula used today in every tire on every car you've ever driven. The Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company was founded in 1898 in Akron, Ohio, named in his honor. He had no connection to it. He never saw a dime from it. So the next time you glance at your tires and spot that Goodyear logo, remember what it actually represents. Not a corporation. A man who poisoned himself with nitric acid, walked 6 miles a day in rubber shoes with an empty rubber wallet, and refused to quit until he changed the world. He just didn't live long enough to enjoy it. If you found this interesting, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more.